So hello, everybody. It's always nice to get together with friends on a Sunday at the library. I just spot our library director, Rob McLean, who deserves much of the credit for the great place that this place is for all of us, who live in Needham, who use the library, who value it so much. The work that he does and all of the outstanding staff, we're proud to be part of it. So I got involved with the Friends of the Library about 5 years ago, and then somehow found myself also a trustee of the library, but I stayed involved with the Friends to work on some programs. They have a tremendous program committee. There are three women, Sue Kesner, Margaret Pantridge, and Deborah Balin, who are the chairs of the program committee for the Friends. You can see it takes a village just to chair the committee. So you can imagine all the other stuff. And we have the help. I need to recognize Gail and Dennett from the library, who helps to make sure all these sorts of events run smoothly. And Mark Mandel from the Needham channel, which does great work for our town, and they record this. I'll mention just briefly about the Friends and then talk about my friend and GBH colleague, Susanne Simpson. The Friends are probably famous for their book sales. And when I say famous, I don't mean worldwide famous, but in Needham, they're relatively famous for their book sales. But besides that, they put on a number of speaking events and other things that this is, approaching the end of this season of events, and they've had some great speakers. Some of you may have been here. Our final speaker after Susanne today, on June 8th, Warren Zanes is going to speak. Warren used to be in a Boston rock band called the Del Fuegos, and then he became a critically acclaimed author. He wrote recently a book about the making of Bruce Springsteen's Nebraska, that they're now turning into a movie with Jeremy Allen White from The Bear playing Springsteen, and Jeremy Strong from Succession playing Springsteen's manager, and Warren's in the middle of that whole thing with Bruce, so life is good for Warren, and he'll be talking on June 8th. But we're so excited today, and we're so fortunate to have Susanne Simpson be our guest. She's the executive producer of Masterpiece, Once Upon a Time Masterpiece Theater, but Masterpiece. PBS's longtime, primetime drama. You're all, if you weren't familiar with it, you wouldn't be here. As executive producer, she commissions important projects with her UK collaborators. Most recently, some of you may have seen All Creatures Great and Small, a nice way to spend some time on a Sunday night. Wolf Hall is on currently. She was the executive producer for Downton Abbey, which of course you all know is one of the more important dramas ever on American television, let alone public television. And before that, she was an executive producer for Nova and worked on some IMAX films. Some of you may have seen the Shackleton film in the IMAX theaters, and that's Suzanne's handiwork. Not so much with the camera, but pretty much with everything else. Happy to be here with all of you today, and honored to introduce my friend and GVH colleague, Susanne Simpson, to talk about Masterpiece and whatever she wants to talk about.
Yep. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
Okay. Get my glasses. You can keep the water.
One of the great things working at GBH are my colleagues. And Jay and I have been there for a very long time, and Jeannie's here today, Jeannie Hopkins. And it's one of the great pleasures to work with such amazing people. But today we're talking about Masterpiece. And I'm really thrilled so many people are here today. So just as a way of giving you a little background about how I came to Masterpiece, I was at Nova for many years working as a producer, writer, director. And I had known Rebecca Eaton, who was the previous executive producer for many years at WGBH. And one day I was driving into the parking lot and she said, "Do you have like 5 minutes to have coffee?" And I said, "Sure." And she said, "You know, I just got some more money and I'd love to bring you on to work with me. I feel like I've been doing this for so long. I'd like somebody who maybe had a younger, different kind of point of view on shows to help me do that. And I want to rebrand the show. I want to bring it back to life. It's a dusty jewel," is what she said. And that's when we began to break Masterpiece into 3 types of programs: our classic, which are basically our costume dramas, our mysteries, and our contemporaries. And we were very lucky to have Laura Linney and Alan Cumming come on to be our hosts for those shows. So I started with Rebecca now 17 years ago. So it's been a long time. And 5 years ago, when she decided to step back, I became the executive producer. And while I was, thrilled to take the job on, I knew how big it was. And of course, 4 months into being the executive producer of Masterpiece, COVID happened. And we produce about 60 hours of programming a year, which is a lot. It's more than any other show except, I think, for the news, the PBS NewsHour. So there I was with all the productions had shut down in the UK. Many of ours were in production at some stage. I knew I only had 14 hours of programs that I could show in the next year. And the next year was our 50th anniversary. So this will tell you the benefit of Masterpiece being around for 54 years, which is I got on the phone, I called every single producer I worked with, every single distributor I worked with, and I said, I have to build a whole new slate of programs. And so have you not presented anything to us? Or is there anything sitting on the shelf you just never brought to us because you thought maybe it's something we wouldn't like to do? Are you ready to edit your show? Would the editing be done, in time for us to run the show? And these people came through for us, and we had some great surprises that year that we may not have had in our original schedule. So we had Glenda Jackson, who was the lead in Elizabeth is Missing. We had a show called Atlantic Crossing. I don't know if any of you saw it. It was about the Norwegian princess and her relationship with FDR. We're actually rebroadcasting that this summer. And if you missed it the first time around, I have to tell you, it is a terrific true story. So I'd recommend it. So I was just fortunate that our 50 years of relationships came through at the moment we needed them most. And after I had bought our programs and knew that I had a full schedule, I would get callbacks from the distributors saying, some of the streamers and networks woke up and they realized they're not going to have any programming. Do you really need that show? And I was like, yeah, I really need that show. I can't give it back to you. So I was glad I acted as quickly as I did, because who knew? It could have taken a lot longer than things turned out to be. One of the things I did when I came in to Masterpiece is I thought, well, I'm going to develop a strategy so that my team understands what it is that we're trying to accomplish together. And part of that strategy was to maintain our long-running series. And you know what I mean by that, because are you watchers of All Creatures Great and Small? Yeah. Oh yeah, right. And you were watchers of Downton? Yep. Yeah. Right? And, we had shows like Endeavor, and we still have Grantchester and Miss Scarlet, if any of you watch that. So those are the shows that we hope we can bring to you year on year on year. But we work with UK broadcasters, and sometimes they don't want that show anymore. So we go into the show thinking, ooh, we'd love this to go at least 5 seasons, maybe more. And all of a sudden they can determine it didn't work for their audience. And one of the examples is Sanditon, if you know that show. So we ran 1 season of Sanditon, which is based on a Jane Austen short story. And it was a real audience favorite, but ITV Network in the UK canceled it. It didn't work for them. So I decided, COVID, are we going to have programs? I think maybe if I don't commission season 2 and 3 of Sanditon, we won't have any costume dramas for probably 5 years. It takes so long to develop and create these programs. So that's what I did, was we shot 2 seasons of Sanditon in 1 summer, 12 episodes. I'll never do it again. But we did it because we weren't sure if we were going to shut down again that next winter. So we took a big risk, but it paid off, and it was something that I think people enjoyed. But I want to just share a little behind the scenes on All Creatures Great and Small, since that is really our most popular show. And this came about because a producer in the UK, his name is Colin Callender. Colin used to be the president of HBO, and he did some beautiful series. He did John Adams, he did Angels in America, he did Nicholas Nickleby. So we know Colin to be one of the best producers we could work with, and he had the idea to take the books and redo the series, adapt it again. I think many of you might have seen the first series, right? But he had a very interesting idea. He was working with a writer, and he and the writer came up with the idea that there were women who were in the book who didn't play very prominent roles. So maybe if they created more storylines for them, they could create a true ensemble group of characters, which is what they did. And I don't know about you, but Mrs. Hall's performance this last season was just, her storyline is just amazing, and Helen has taken on a much bigger role too than in the books. The other thing that the writer told me at one point is that when he started reading the books, he said, there was a wealth of stories about cows. So he had to go and read across the entire series to find stories about sheep and lambs and, other kinds of animals, because there was just a lot of work with cows. And I'm sure you've seen some scenes and wondered, did they really do that? And it's like, no, they sometimes have to create mechanical backsides or other parts of the animal to do the stories that they need to do. And they're very, very careful with handling of the animals, not only because of the rules in the UK, but because they have really an excellent animal handler. And it turns out that one of the main creatures is Tricky Woo. Yeah, you all know Tricky Woo? Well, Tricky Woo's name is Derek, and Derek is actually the animal handler's pet, who lives in her house and walks in the mud and gets all dirty. You wouldn't think that because he's such a prince in the show with Mrs. Pumphrey. Sam West, who plays Siegfried in the show, said that it's very embarrassing to work with Derek because Derek hits his mark every time. And the rest of them don't so much. So, they try to avoid scenes with Derek. I thought too, just because I did hear some oohs and ahs about Downton, that I thought I would just, tell you a couple of stories from the making of that series as well. I'm still in touch with the people who made the show and with many of the actors. And so I was invited to come out to Highclere when they were shooting for the movie. And this will be the third movie, probably the last, and it's likely to come out in September, I think. So visiting Highclere is just an amazing experience, as you can imagine. The thing that's so unusual is that you think of Highclere as this very big, grand place, but when you walk into that main entry level, it's actually quite small. And it feels much more like a home than you would think. And the Carnarvons, Lord and Lady Carnarvon, do not live in the house. They live on a cottage on the property there. But they're in and out of the house all the time. And the crew is quite large. They usually have 2 cameras going at the same time. And while I was there, they were shooting one of their dinner scenes. And when you shoot a dinner scene, it takes forever because you not only shoot the whole table, then they have to go and shoot every individual character at the table, and not only what they say, but what their reactions are. So these are long filming days for which there's a lot of chit-chat at the table. They play games, all kinds of things just to keep themselves entertained. Julian Fellows, who wrote the series, I got to know him a little bit as well. And I remember I was out to dinner with him, and this was maybe well into season 5, almost season 6. And he said something that I had never really thought about. He said that when he was writing Downton Abbey, his wife told me that he used to write it in his den and then speak it out loud because he had been an actor. So she would wait at the door until he finished so she could bring in tea for him. But when he designed the characters for Upstairs, Downstairs, he created what he called equivalents. So Lord Grantham upstairs, his equivalent was Mr. Carter, Jim Carter, Mr. Carson, thank you. Jim Carter, Mr. Carson. And Maggie Smith, who played the Dowager Countess, her equivalent was Mrs. Patmore. And this one really surprised me. So the daughter played by Michelle Dockery, right? Her equivalent was Thomas Barrow, the villainous valet downstairs. I thought that was very interesting. The other thing that was interesting is the director who set up that show. He did all the casting, and I don't know about you, but I thought the casting for it was just perfect. And how he decided to do it is that what he wanted was kind of very good actors playing in the upstairs and bring in newer actors to the downstairs. So what he did was he created mentorships so that Mr. Carson was meant to mentor Rob James Collier, who played Thomas Barrow, because Rob had just been working in soaps and he had never been involved in something quite as big as this. And that really created a family. Not only did the upstairs feel like family and the downstairs felt like family, but by having these mentorships across, it meant that the entire cast really felt like one big family. And to do a series like that for 6 seasons, they shoot for months when they do it. To have a situation where people feel like family just makes for a very happy set. And because so many of these actors were very experienced, when I was on set, I would notice they would, upstairs cast would be sitting in the room with the fireplace and the red couches, the library. And they would talk to each other about how they were going to play their part. And they would, among themselves, choreograph how they would say things, what they would do, when they would do it. And they did this so that when the director came in, they were ready to shoot, and he could make adjustments in it. And when you're shooting television, you're shooting very fast, and you don't have a lot of time to really, redo everything. And so Julian and the director had said to each of the actors, you own the character. You own it. You bring what you think that character should bring to each series. And saying that to an actor really is so empowering. So again, I think that's one of the reasons why it's been such a happy set for so many years. I thought that I had mentioned all of our long-running series. I think Unforgotten might be a favorite of some, and we have that coming back this fall. And we introduced a new show last year called The Marlowe Murder Club. Yes, based on Robert Thorogood's books. And that will be coming back again this fall, and we're actually already shooting season 3, so we expect that to keep going. And many of you watched Magpie Murders, Moonflower Murders. Yes. I love that show. And so we've done those 2 seasons, and now we're filming a 3rd book that Anthony Horowitz has written that's just come out. It's called Marble Hall Murders, so you can read it before you see it. We won't show it till next year. A lot of people have asked me, well, how do you choose your shows? And that certainly is really priority number 1 for me. And I have a content team. Right now there are 3 other people on that content team. We get pitched, I'm not kidding, 100 new projects a year. And so a lot of the job is reading scripts, going through pitches, having telephone calls with the UK producers to talk about what show they're interested in doing. The number 1 thing in choosing the show is the writer for us. It always has been and probably always will be. And I think that may be why Masterpiece distinguishes itself in some ways, because we do literary adaptations and we do original works, but it's the vision of the writer that means the most in those, because the UK has a system where only one writer writes the entire series. So that's what Julian Fellows did. Russell Lewis wrote all of Endeavour over 9 seasons. Daisy Coulomb writes Grant Chester. And so we find that what's strongest in the material is when somebody has a vision for it. And the UK has a system we don't have as much here in the US, and that's that they really see things as a craft in the film industry. So a lot of these writers started out as playwrights. Then they moved to working on some of the big soaps like EastEnders and Coronation Street and Holby City, and then started to work up to really learning the craft so well that they would generate their own ideas, and then they own that series to write for as long as they choose. Sometimes when a series is going to be going on for so long, they bring in people into a writer's room so that they have help in writing some of the episodes, but usually they still stay across every single episode in the series. Anthony Horowitz, who I mentioned, who's a novelist, he's one of the most experienced television writers who we work with. He did Midsummer's Murders, fabulous, and he has written any number of television shows, and he's among the fastest writers I've ever met, which is always a pleasure. The other way we choose our projects is based on producers. And as I mentioned, Masterpiece has been around now for 50 years. So we have some long-standing producers like Colin Callender, who I mentioned from Playground, who does All Creatures Great and Small. He was also the producer on Wolf Hall. And he's the producer on a new show that we're going to introduce in the fall called Maigret, which is based on a French detective series, Georges Simenon. And it has been made as a television series in French before. There was a 3-part Maigret that went out with Rowan Atkinson. But what we're doing is completely different. It's a contemporary series. So it's really the young Maigret and how did he get started. And it's contemporary. It's not going to be in the 1930s when Georges was writing this set of novels. And we had kind of a funny moment in our casting of the series. One of the things, if I'm a lead commissioner on a show like Maigret, we get more involved. So not only do we get involved in every step of the script, but we also get involved in choosing directors and the cast. So we work with such experienced people, I almost never say no to somebody they suggest for casting. But with Maigret, they sent one person, and it was just like, no. No, he's not a leading man. We need a leading man. You know, if you have a lead in a show, he's going to be in practically every single scene. We need somebody who can really do that. So then they sent a second person. And I watched that audition, and I went, oh, no. Like, really, no. And I asked, well, how many people have you looked at? They said 117 audition tapes. I said, well, did you narrow it down? Can I watch the narrowed down versions? And I got 34 audition tapes. And myself and 2 other people on our content team watched all of them. And then we got onto a Zoom with Colin Callender and his team, and Colin said to me, well, is there anybody you like? And I said, I absolutely love this one guy, Ben Wainwright. And he laughed and he said, he was our first choice too, but he hasn't been available until this morning when his agent called and said the other job didn't work out, so now he's available. So I say this because being the executive producer of Masterpiece, I am so fortunate to work with so many great people. But my job is still to look out for the audience. That's how I see it, is I'm really making my choices, hoping that you'll like those choices and that you'll see in this actor somebody who you really want to watch, who you really care about. So everything I do is in service of that. So, second part of my strategy, so I told you about maintaining these long-running series. Second part is we need shows that draw attention to Masterpiece. And when we have a long-running show, after the first season, we pretty much get highlights in the press. People don't really do reviews anymore. They don't write big features. So the question was, well, how can we keep Masterpiece really top of mind for the critics and for awards and all of that? And I thought, okay, what we need are 1 to 2 tentpole shows a year. Shows that are possibly just limited series, you know, anywhere from 2 to 6 episodes. And so an example of a tentpole series is Wolf Hall. And Wolf Hall obviously has A-list talent with Damian Lewis and Mark Rylance, and we know that the press wants to write about them because they love them as much as we do. So while that program was twice the cost of the original Wolf Hall, because it happened 10 years later, we decided that we would really reach deep and make it possible for us. We felt, you know, it was such an important show. And I hope most of you have had a chance to watch it. The performances are really out of this world, is what I'd say. And it did get us enormous attention. So we got lots of reviews. We're now, right now, in an awards campaign, you know, hoping that we'll be able to get Emmy nominations. It's just received a number of BAFTA nominations, and so that just puts Masterpiece into the press a lot. And the other thing it does is, you know, we have a lot of competition out there. You see it because you probably own BritBox and Netflix and, you know, as many streamers as you think you can handle. And it's therefore, you know, Netflix is releasing as many as, you know, I don't know, 15 new programs every month. How do we get in there? And so we have to have shows that have something special about them, and Wolf Hall is one example. The second tentpole we had for this year is a show called Miss Austen. If our experience has taught us anything, they've taught us that we could show Jane Austen shows 24/7. 24/7. They just, everybody loves them. For those who might know a little bit about Jane Austen history, her older sister burned most of her letters. And so there was always a question why. And the author of the book, Miss Austen, Jill Hornby, tries to answer that question. So the story's across two time periods, the current time where Cassandra's looking for more letters so she can burn them. And every time she finds a letter, she reads it, and it flashes back to their early days as girls. So it's very clever, it's very fun, and it's very heartwarming, so I hope you have a chance to see it. This show came to me from a producer who had only worked in films. She had run BBC films for many years, was responsible for shows like The Queen and Brooklyn, and she optioned this book, and a mutual friend said, well, why don't you find out if Suzanne's interested? She sent it to me, I read it, and I thought, oh, we have to have this. And when somebody sends you a project like that, you know, the fear is, oh, somebody else will grab it if, you know, I don't. And we're very fortunate to have something called the Masterpiece Trust, which is money that donors have given to us over the years. And that provides for me a bit of money to develop shows. So I said to the producer, I want this show, I'll pay for the development, for the writer, for the 4 scripts, and you and I will go out and try to find a UK broadcaster and a distributor to help put the rest of the money into this. And what's unusual is Masterpiece has never done that before. Up to the time that I came in as the executive producer, the shows were pretty much made in the UK, and we could decide after the show got started and had a UK broadcaster, did we want to be the presenters in the US? But we never developed shows to be put in production. We never commissioned shows first in. We always waited for the BBC or ITV to do it. But the problem now is the ITV and BBC networks are not as interested in costume drama. And here huge appetite, right? I mean, there's huge appetite. The Gilded Age, you know, Bridgerton, Queen Charlotte, you know, pretty much everything that comes out, you know, people devour. And I just couldn't see Masterpiece continuing without having costume dramas. And so we were very fortunate because the producer and I went to the BBC, and they have a group called the Acquisitions Group. And if it starts outside of the UK, the Acquisitions Group will in fact put in money to finish it. So we finished it with that money, and it actually ended up on BBC One because they loved it so much, they thought it should go out as widely as possible. So it did last February, and it was a big hit in the UK, and I'm just thrilled that we're going to be showing it very soon for you. We also are right now going to develop a second book that the author has written. It's called The Elopement, and that will be coming out soon, and we'll have that show in a couple of years, because that's about how long it takes to make these shows. One show I'm going to tell you about, a little on the early side, because we won't be showing it until next spring in 2026. Do many of you know the Forsyte Saga? Yeah. Right? Damian Lewis? Oh, perfect, right? It was a wonderful series. Well, what we're doing is we are adapting a new Forsyte Saga, and the writer came to us with the idea to actually do a prequel to the books. Find out where some of these characters started, why did they become the way they are, before we start some of the major storylines. And what that allowed us to do was to have younger actors play some of the parts. So they're much younger than, say, Damian Lewis was in his role. The other thing that the author wanted to do is, again, in the books, the female characters aren't really developed, and she wanted to develop them in a way that they were very much a part of the story. So she has done that. And we have already filmed and completed season 1, and we are about to film season 2 without even having shown the series yet, because we need to stay on a schedule. But I just believe it's so good that I think the audience is going to love it when we can bring it to you. So just know that's coming up. And I have some other things to share with you in terms of things coming up. I mentioned May Gray to you. We also have a show called The Gold with Hugh Bonneville. I don't know if any of you watch Slow Horses, Jack Loudon in Slow Horses. Jack Loudon is in it. This is based on a true story about a robbery of many millions of dollars. It was the biggest robbery that happened in the UK. And so we're starting season 1 this fall, and then we'll also have season 2 next year. We have Unforgotten 6 coming up this fall as well. And we have a new show that was originally a feature film, but was never shown in the US. It was only shown in the UK and other territories. And a friend of mine who works for the company said, "Would you want it for television?" And we watched it and fell in love with it. It has Glenda Jackson in her last performance. It has Michael Caine in what will be his last performance. And this is called The Great Escaper. And it's really, really wonderful. So I think I'm going to close, and certainly, you know, there'll be time for questions, but I just want to say I have the best job in the world. It's not without its challenges. So as I mentioned, a lot of competition. And that's been going on for years now with Netflix and Amazon, and it felt like every month there was a new streamer, Paramount, Peacock, Hulu, whatever. And what that's done to the industry is, while there's some fabulous shows that have come out of the last 10, 15 years, those shows are very expensively made. So a show like The Crown, $10 million an episode. I'm sure Bridgerton is more. And that is just not an arena that we can play in. And I at first thought, well, maybe we won't have as many shows because we won't be able to afford as many. And I have to say, we just have the best UK partners in the world who know us, who want to work with us, who find the right projects right-sized for us. And yes, we've had to pay more money because those streamers came in and flooded the UK with money. And that just raised everybody's salaries and everything that's happening there. It's beginning to come back down now because the streamers retreated from the UK, and now there's not as much production going on there. And so we have been fortunate to just stay the course during a very competitive time. The other challenge that we're facing is, of course, federal funding. Who isn't? So that's another big challenge for the whole public television system, and probably for programming as well. We're quite fortunate at Masterpiece because we have corporate sponsors, Viking and Raymond James. Viking has been with us now 13 years, going on 14, 15. They have been the best partners we could possibly have had. They've supported us through everything. They only sponsored Masterpiece during COVID, when they were losing a lot of money. But they really are such loyal people to us, so we're quite fortunate with that. And I mentioned the Masterpiece Trust, which also has given us a lot of support over the years. And, you know, in spite of the challenges that we have, I have to say that I think what keeps me going, and I have a team of about 28 people, and I think what keeps us going is that we actually see the mission for Masterpiece. It started out really being adapting novels for television. It's grown into many different kinds of programming over the years. And I do think of Masterpiece like literature. I feel it can be very self-affirming. I think it can be transformative. And I have been calling it, for myself, something, it's about emotional truths. It's about ideas, it's about beliefs, it's about what makes us all human. And that, in some way, is what brings us together. And I feel like All Creatures Great and Small is probably the best example of that. And I try every day to live up to that with the other shows that we're creating for you. So I just wanted to say it's my joy to work on this show. I hope that it's your joy in watching it, you know, on Sunday nights or streaming or however you do. And I just want to thank the Needham Library and Jay for inviting me to come today and share with you a lot about, you know, how Masterpiece came to be and what we have coming up. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you so much, Suzanne. That was just really wonderful. And I have the mic if anybody has any questions.
Thank you. This was absolutely wonderful. And I certainly am going to go home and increase my monthly contribution.
Thank you.
I'm fascinated by Anthony Horowitz, and I was so surprised to see that he also wrote Foyle's War.
Yes.
And you said that he's one of the fastest writers or something. Do you have anything else to say? I'm fascinated by his breadth.
You know, Anthony is one of those people who's bigger than life. If you go out to dinner with him, he is so engaged in not only literature, but what's happening in politics, you know, watches everything that goes on in the UK. He's a very engaged person. He knows everything about murder mystery. And if you missed it, we actually did interviews with him about mysteries. And they are on our website, so it's pbs.org/masterpiece. And I think if you put in Anthony Horowitz, they'll probably come up. But sometimes our programs are shorter than the length they need to be. So we did interviews with him so he could talk about the golden age of mystery writers. He knows everything about Agatha Christie. I mean, inside out. I can't keep up with all of the references that he puts into his work that refer to other writers. And so if you watch Magpie Murders or Moonflower Murders, if you're an Agatha Christie person, you'll see that the 1955 part of the story is very in the Agatha Christie mold. So he got interested in reading murder mysteries when he was a kid, Agatha Christie's for the most part, went through college and found out that he actually was a pretty good writer. And because he loved mysteries so much, he started in that genre, and he just is one of the most knowledgeable people. He could teach it as a subject anywhere, but do look for those shorter pieces. His wife is the producer of the shows, and was for Foyle's War, not for Midsommar's, but for all of Foyle's War. And when they thought about doing his books, Magpie, they came to us at Masterpiece because we had done Foyle's War. And, you know, so they started with us to see if it was something that we would like to do. Yeah, he's excellent writer.
What is The Elopement about, the new show that you mentioned was coming out?
Okay, it's all about family, so I have to do the family tree in my head. Jane and Cassandra had a brother, and the brother Edward was adopted by a very wealthy family who had no heir. And the name of the house was Godmersham Park. The author, Jill Hornby, has written a book, Godmersham Park. This is the one after it, The Elopement. So in Godmersham Park, she had established Edward and his family, his wife Fanny, and then they have a number of kids. The Elopement is about one of their children who wants to elope with an Austen family member of the next generation, but Fanny, the mother, doesn't want her to do it. So it's basically about, it's a love story, but among Austen family members. Did that explain it enough? Okay.
Hi, thank you for giving us fabulous shows, really fabulous shows. But question, will there be more seasons of Annika? Oh, no, no, no. We love it so.
I love it so much too.
Oh.
I love Nicola Walker. I mean, you can just pretty much watch anything with Nicola
That's
Walker.
the show you said is going to be re-airing?
Re-airing, no.
No, that-
Atlantic Crossing.
Oh, Atlantic Crossing, okay.
Yeah. You know, how Annika started, it started as a 10-minute BBC4 radio show. And the writer, Nick Waller, had cast Nicola to do it. And they did it for years and years and years. It was just a 10-minute radio show. And then he got the idea to turn it into a television series. And so he, of course, went to Nicola first. And he's a very funny writer, and she's really in tune with him. I think, to bring that kind of humor out.
Yeah, I love the fact that she talks to the screen.
Yes.
So she's talking to us. It's great. I love that.
Yes, and she just pulls it off beautifully. But she reached a point in her life where taking that much time away from her family didn't work. And it's shot in Glasgow, and she just had to say, I can't continue. So, doubt it will ever come back.
Okay. We'll follow her.
Yeah.
We'll follow her.
Any other questions? This was just
Did you have one?
How is it working with
here.
Julian?
Oh, sorry.
How is it working with Julian Fellows? He seems like such a grand person. And also, will you eventually be showing any of the Downton Abbey movies on PBS?
So people heard those questions. How is it working with Julian? Oh my gosh, he's another bigger than life character. He started out as an actor, as I mentioned, and he's a Renaissance man. He knows everything about history. Really quite remarkable. So again, you know, the kind of thing when you're with him, he can talk pretty much on every subject. However, when he starts to talk about his politics, his wife goes, "Julian, nobody wants to hear that." So that's the only subject she doesn't let him talk about. But he is really such a thoughtful person. He is the kind of person who works very well with others. Not everybody does. Julian does, and had very close relationships with the producers of Downton Abbey, and they worked together on the scripts, developing, you know, it was an original work. So those are hard, and so he worked with them to develop storylines that worked. And while we were doing Downton Abbey, NBC approached him about doing another series, and he had the idea to do The Gilded Age, sort of Edith Wharton. And so he started working on that almost 8 years before he even started writing The Gilded Age. He was such a fan of Edith Wharton. He went to her home, which is in Western Mass. I was at an event for Edith Wharton's home. It was a fundraising event. It was taking place in Boston, and people were bidding on the ability to have tea with Julian and his wife at their home in England. And 2 people got into a bidding war, and it was fierce. I mean, right? And at what point his wife just went, "Stop, stop, I can't take it anymore. We'll have tea with both of you." So, and his wife, Lady Emma, because Julian is a lord, so it's Lord Fellows and Lady Fellows, is a lady-in-waiting to Sir Michael of Kent. And I didn't know what a lady-in-waiting did these days, and she explained to me that people like Sir Michael of Kent have many charities that they're involved in, and the ladies-in-waiting are the ones who organize events, help raise money with the charities that they're involved in. But she is also a fabulous person.
And she asked about the Downton Abbey movies on PBS.
Oh, I'm sorry. We showed the first movie. I don't think we'll be showing the second or the third.
This may be naive, but why is everything made in the UK and nothing's made in the US?
No, it's not naive. It's kind of how it started. Many years ago, WGBH had some very smart executives who knew about the public broadcasting system starting up and began to ask the question, well, what should be on the show? And they went, well, it should look like the BBC. So they sent executives over to England to really shadow some shows like Nova, the equivalent over there is Horizon, a history show, a public affairs show. But there were all these fabulous BBC costume dramas, and a person at GBH, Henry Beckton, came up with the idea, well, they could license the shows and show them on public television. And so that's how it started, with BBC shows for the most part. At that point, ITV Network was a commercial network. It still is. It wasn't showing the same kind of programming. So BBC and GBH had a long history of showing those shows. And only as things changed in the marketplace and ITV started to do more mysteries that were things that we could be interested in, did it broaden out to other networks there. But the reason it stays this way is the funding model. In the UK, what they pay writers is a quarter, a fifth of what a writer here in the US would ask for. And they also, as I mentioned, really want to have authorship. And working in the US, you don't get that as much. You still do. I mean, there are some shows definitely who have writers who control the show. But it was just a model at the time where the finances worked, where the BBC could pay for most of the show, a distributor could have rest of world, and we could have the same show at a very low license fee. And it worked for years and years until the streamers went, wait a minute, we're paying $5 million an episode and Masterpiece is paying X. Well, wait a minute, we could have those shows and we could pay X instead of $5 million an episode. And that's kind of what happened, is that they discovered that there was this great content, you know, terrific writers, producers. And so now more of that British content has been on other streamers. And for us to come into the US marketplace would push the cost up.
Okay, this was just fantastic. Thank you so much, Suzanne. I just have a few closing remarks. Thank you all. It's nice to get together with everybody. Thanks again to Gay Ellen and Mark, and to our wonderful library staff who make this a great place. While you're here, enjoy the library. I guess I'll leave you with a few requests for support. Support your library. Support public television that does this great work. And while we're at it, let's go Celtics. Have a great day, everybody, and we'll see you.